if you went to a doctor or a healthcare practitioner and they convinced you to do some sort of treatment, take a drug, get an injection, do a surgery, whatever it might be, and you learned that they did not really properly inform you, they did not give you all of the information. Do you know the law in your country that you could accuse them of breaking? Thank you, everybody, for being here. I really appreciate it. I think you probably all already know this, but we're here to try to find at least 27 good people around the European Union, ideally at least one in every country. And I'm going to start off, read all these wonderful words so that we all understand why we're here, right? We're here to defend respect for individual autonomy and integrity, preservation of free consent in all circumstances, provision of accurate, understandable, and accessible information, comprehensive understanding of clinical trials and medical procedures, recognizing the right to refuse or withdraw consent, which that's the one, that I think is a big one, but all of these are important. Mandating greater transparency by calling for the publication of agendas, meetings, and all that. Disclosing lobbying activities, prohibiting secretive meetings, evaluating public interest over private interest, and establishing sanctions for violations. I would like to introduce Justina Walker, who Justina and I had a conversation about this, I think, way the heck back in February. It's been a long and winding road. I'm obviously from the United States, so I don't get to sign the Citizens Initiative, but I think it's a fantastic opportunity for all of us to get better connected to like-minded people, certainly all over Europe and maybe even beyond. Justina, let me hand it over to you. You're the driving force behind all this, and the floor is yours.
Hi. Yes, it was February, actually. Yes, you're correct. We were having long discussions between February, whether to petition, initiative, and like lots of work. And so in the end, I think we were just looking for tools that we've got and the most powerful ones. And then we ended up between 7 of us who initially discussed it later on to just go for that initiative. And so yeah, I mean, some of you I know. Hi, Marta. Hi, Miriam. I know you guys. Some I've seen faces. Denmark, I've seen faces, so I do recognize, but some I don't. But it's lovely to meet you and see you. And with all the back and forth, they've allowed us to get into the signature process, which is great. And now we're going to be opening for collecting of signatures. And I guess we're looking at it from 2 perspectives. It does allow us to get outside of the bubble that we kind of stuck in, and we've been for the last 3 years, because it's something that is mainstream. So the initiatives are things that are kind of being looked at. Okay, somebody came up with an initiative. And then it allows us to get to the mainstream media with it, but also allows us to get to people who definitely have been doing lots of work over the last 3 years, and everybody's been doing something else. Or so we had lots of groups of doctors and lawyers and then activists separately, and it's really hard to get everybody together. So what we want to kind of do is start the signature process. It will start at midnight or 27th, well, jumping into 28th of November. And then we do have a year to get these signatures, but what we're doing is aiming for 6 months. I know we kind of put a crazy target on it. And if we can open people's eyes to this initiative, and that it's looking at defending our rights, but also through the second point that we've got, one of the points that we've got with the transparency. What we want to do is be able to push in the information about the lack of transparency with the organizations that are currently negotiating stuff. And WHO is one of them. It's absolutely non-transparent. It gets money from sources that we know, but people don't realize a lot of times. And these are the main two things that we really wanted to focus on. So we had a wonderful team of mixture of lawyers. We had Philip Kruse initially, who started with the draft for us. Then we had Helena Tender, who pretty much did most of the amazing work. She's absolutely brilliant. We had a Czech lawyer, Jana, and another Spanish lawyer. So we had a mixture of different lawyers kind of coming together with the citizens and then listening to what we wanted, drafting it in such a way that we will get through the process of the ECI, that it will not. But then on the 8th of November, we got a green light from the Commission, which was a mega surprise for all of us. And here we are. So all you need to do is just make this information public in your country, and then just direct people to the site to go find their flag. They have already the whole system, so there's nothing for us to do. Between us 7 that are kind of signed on this as the main faces, but it's really just for the fact that there has to be this legal requirement for 7. For example, I'm Polish. I will be mainly, I'm going to have access to all of the 7, but let's say we've got Bulgarian Dr. George Todorov, who will be in charge of making sure that the minimum threshold for Bulgaria is met. And so on. So we've got German, the same thing. They'll have access to there and be able to see. Everything will be visible on the page. So as people do the e-signatures, these will be percentage-wise showing on the website.
So I've got a bunch of questions. Let me sort of play act with you, Justina, and ask a question that I think a lot of people have, or a series of questions, and I'll give you what I think the answer is, and you can tell me if I'm wrong or elaborate on it. And so the idea is, to look for activists and organizers who realize that this is an opportunity to do outreach, and whatever organization you may be a part of, or whatever it is you want to do, this is a perfect opportunity to grow. And
Yes.
along the way, if you get thousands of signatures. So second question, those minimum per country, we don't have to get the minimum in every country. We just need to get the minimum in 7, because
that is correct. Yeah.
Okay. My understanding is that someone has to be have national citizenship, or whatever the terminology might be used. Someone like me could not take up residence in Europe and sign this petition. I would have to be a national in one of the 27 nations. Okay.
That's correct. Yeah.
You could be residing outside of your nation, but your signature would count towards the nation that you have citizenship in. So you might be talking to somebody in Paris or Amsterdam or wherever. The digital e-signature, would work all that out. People would, have to choose their country and do it properly. But you get that connection to grow the circle of influence that you have, and build, teams of people who are like-minded. Now, the 10 items, I've actually, some of you folks and others I've spoken with, and as I introduced it to people, we were on a Zoom or a video call or whatever, and I watched them read the 10 things, and they'd be reading it and they go, oh yeah, right. Nobody was like, it's designed to be inviting. It's designed to be, how could you say no? Right now, there are a bunch of Debbie Downers, and there are a bunch of people who will say a wide variety of things. I'm going to make up some numbers, and this is just me with my attitude. If you ask 200 people, maybe 45 of them will be like, forget it. Nothing ever works. What are you bothering? I don't care. Right. Another 45% will say, well, I'll sign it. I don't know what good it's going to do you, but sure, it sounds okay. I'll sign it. I don't know. Thank you. Bye-bye. Okay. That leaves like 20 people. You got 45%, 45%. And I'm just making these numbers up. Out of those 20, some of them will be like, oh yeah, I'll share it with my friends. It looks like it's kind of an okay idea. And they'll post it on some social media somewhere. and there'll be a little spike of activity, and then they'll just give up. What I'm looking for are 27 people who want to be clinking champagne glasses when we get our 1.5 million signatures, that were here from the beginning and worked all the way through, and see that this, whether or not the million signatures happen, this is a valid effort to raise people's awareness and identify who your allies are. And we got a year to do it. And I'm looking for 27 people who are in for a year. And so that's okay if you can't make that commitment. And I'm not saying go away if you can't make that commitment. But what I'm saying is spread the word. And there will be someone who knows someone who knows someone who knows someone who sees this, and they're like, oh, I get it. This is a great way to bring people together.
I wonder, when we get these signatures, what will that lead to? What can we do concretely, so to say? What can we do with it? What effect will it have?
I think the main important bit that I want to kind of express is the fact that we've never been in that territory before. We had different petitions. We had national petitions. Some of them managed to get to Parliament, like in UK, and then had a quick discussion. We had some, I think people were signing not only petitions, declarations, but actually none of these were, except for few, were directly going into any legal body, except for the Parliament ones, right? So with the ECI, that's the first step. It's actually going to the highest option we have for the whole Europe, or for all of the 27 countries, because most of us know that we have our own national parliaments. However, a lot of our legislation and stuff comes from Europe. So when they sign something, make some legislation, it then gets put on us. If we don't obey by these rules coming from EU, we get sanctioned on different levels in Europe, right? So what we're doing is we're hitting the highest we can, which is the European Commission, which is above the Parliament. I guess it's something that is mainstream. The ECI is a mainstream information, so it has now been on the ECI website, which is Commission website. This is a tool that allows us to get to mainstream media because it's a mainstream thing. And it is much easier for us to go and try to approach now this mainstream media that totally ignores us with the stuff that we were going forward, because we have a tool that is mainstream tool, and it's coming from this, reputable, in brackets, let's call it, source, which is the European Commission, right? So that is one thing. Once that door is open to the mainstream media, and any one of us is able to go and say, well, we've got this initiative, and we're in that mainstream media, nothing stops us from tackling all the other things that we've been talking about previously. But second thing is, gives us the ability to show that there is more of us in Europe, more of us that are not happy with what's happening, with the power grab, with the lack of consent, with the lack of transparency. Then we are actually making a stand globally that there are people, and they can pretend that there isn't much of us, but there is. So that's where it's taking us. Now, from the legal perspective, what it does, it takes us to the step, as they call it, I believe, step 6. That's where we will, at some point, when we get over that million and verify it, be able to go and sit at the table with the Commission. And of course, that's still a bit far. I believe that the most impact we'll do by having that access to mainstream, being able to show how many of us is there, being able, through being allowed to show publicly what we're doing, add and touch other subjects that we've been talking about the last 3 years. And then we will sit at that table. Once we sit at it, of course, that's a step quite far. We will then be able to ask for legislation, which is important, because this can go two ways. And this is where we will have a team of people who are really, really, really uncorruptible, because that's one main thing we need to make sure we've got. So we will kind of make sure that they're the people that cannot be bribed. We have experienced people from previous initiatives, this is all in steps, but there are many things we can gain from it. And one of them is that also that connection, because we will be able to connect to all of us together underneath that one initiative. Get the contacts, exchange emails, inform people about things that are happening. We're being granted a lovely tool where we can inform people about the progress of the initiative, to everybody who will want to know about it. So yeah, these are the main things. James, you want to add something?
I know Mimi had a similar and related question, I think. So if you want to go ahead and say what you want, you're muted at the moment.
Hi, I am new. I didn't know that this initiative exists. I do some in Slovenia. I do what I can. James knows some my actions. So I read all the paper, all the documents on this subject. And I have questions. What about all legislation of human rights, European Convention on Human Rights, this Lisbon Treaty and human rights in Europe, and also in, as I know, in Slovenia, Constitution of Slovenia also has chapter about human rights and freedom. How can we connect your my English is not perfect.
The initiative?
Yes, your initiative with legislation which is already in force in Europe, in European Union, and in European states as part of constitution.
I think I understand a little bit. What you're talking about, it's already included in our initiative, right? And a part of this initiative is for the people to have a voice and have the right to, for example, the WHO to dialogue with us without we have to consent. We have to know what they want to impose to the people. That's why we are not an initiative only of academic people. We are an initiative of ordinary people that are citizens, right? And we are the voice of the citizens, and more citizens will join the initiative. More countries will join the initiative. The Treaty of Lisbon, and it's included. If you read our document, the one that was gone through the European Commission and it was approved, that's why we are here now, and that's why also James, so kind, is helping us in this such an amazing way. That's why we do need these signatures in order the initiative goes to the next step, and that is we all have that voice, and they have to give us the right to tell us. For example, I'm trying also to find the words in English. The consent, informed consent.
If I may, I think this might help answer Mimi's question. This is the document.
Yes.
It's available on my site, and so it has an introductory page.
Yeah.
And the first and second requests and all of the subcategories of that. But
yes.
If you go down
at the bottom,
further,
there is an option which says legal basis. So
right.
everything that we are asking for, we support it with already existing legal legislation. So that's where you can find it. So like for the,
Okay.
we didn't, let's be honest, our lawyers, our wonderful lawyers, Helena Tender, which was the one that was like mainly working on it. She was like the head for this project. She's really put it in there. So if you look at the request one legal basis, all the articles that we are supporting underneath what we're asking for are there. And these can be used. I hope that's what you meant. That's what answers your question.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to scroll down just a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I think you were talking about down here near the bottom of it, request number one.
Yeah, that's it.
You know, here's the legal argument for that, and so forth and so on. So this document is available in my article, and I think this is request number 2. Mimi,
correct.
does that feel like a good answer to your question? I hope. If it isn't an answer to your question, go right ahead.
You know, it's is there any possibility to demand that European Commission, European Parliament, and all the institutions do their best to provide all the legislation about human rights and freedom which are already exist? You know, we have rules in Europe and in our countries.
Yeah, we all have.
How can we combine whatever already exists and this initiative?
It seems, Mimi, like you're actually advocating for exactly what this citizens initiative is designed to do. It's to raise an issue that says we need to examine and change or improve or modify or reject the regulations and legislation and so forth to ensure that these rights are respected. It seems like what you're saying is exactly what this process is supposed to be able to do. Please, everybody, correct me if you want to add anything to that.
Right. Absolutely right. Yes. The thing is, Mimi, is that once we go to submit an initiative like this, which everyone thought, even the MPs, the European parliamentarians, they support, they never thought this initiative will go through, will pass in the European Commission, right? And it did. But we have to go step by step. Right? And we have to go around under some legislation. Otherwise, we will never go through. And what we pretend is the first step is to enter. And how do you fight the dragon? It's if you go inside the dragon, right? And start to slut the dragon from inside to outside. That's what we pretend. We pretend the most important thing, it's oblige them to talk and to face us and to talk to her. What James said is exactly what this initiative is about. Now, about every human rights in each country. For example, I'm going to give you very quickly the example of Portugal. Everyone has to know the Constitution. Once you know your Constitution, you apply your rights. For example, I've done I've done many protests and put the biggest protest in Portugal, right? And I never had a fine. I never had went arrested. I never had to identify myself to the police because I said no, never wear a mask, never done nothing that the other people were doing. Why? Because I know my rights and I apply my Constitution. And we have the Article 21 that says I have the right to resistance. And I have the right to do not obey if I find, for example, if we are a bunch of people, we find that for example, the police is using, help me here, Justina and James, abuse of power, right? Or if someone, for example, in the restaurant come and tell me, oh, you cannot enter without your mask, and I tell him, well, you cannot tell me that. You know, you have to know your rights. If your boss say to you, you must inject yourself and put your mask because it's a rule, and I say to you, and if you know your constitution, you apply your human rights. You understand? So each country have to know, and each person have to know and use that in order to defend. That's why now in Portugal they commit a lot of crimes about that. They put people out of their jobs. They took mothers from children from their mothers because of the mask. They've done all kind of things, and people now send these people to court, and now they want to change our constitution in order for us do not be able to protect against the abuse of power. That's why this initiative is also so important, right? Once we have all the signatures, our governments cannot decide for us, because we have this document, whatever, this initiative that says, well, the people now have a voice, and you have to talk to us before you say yes to this double.
Let me go on to Nirvana. I know Nirvana had her hand up before. Nirvana, do you still have a question?
Because we have legislation in Europe already, she mentioned the European Convention of Human Rights. Also, all our countries are also member of the UN. There's also a human rights charter there. The point is, they managed to do all what they did anyway. I thought that she was trying to say this. How can this be a different legislation compared to what's already there? That didn't seem to have worked. Yes.
You know, Nirvana, that actually triggered a thought for me. Okay, there's a difference between a statement of rights, a declaration of rights, a charter of rights, and the legislation that gives a little bit of teeth to making sure everyone respects them. The whole concept of an initiative is to trigger the crafting and writing and adopting of legislation to make sure that those rights are respected. Paula, go ahead.
Yes. Well, thank you, Mimi, for raising these issues. We have to make our voices heard, as we can. But we have to take any opportunity to make our voice heard. And, what that's going to do, we don't know ahead of time. We can guess. But yes, see, it's not a matter of these things have already been said, because they don't need anything. They do what they want, unless we oppose them. And as Vicky said, the problem is that not only there are two issues very important. Not only we don't know our rights, but maybe now they lost a little bit, but maybe 70, 80, God only knows, % of the people think they are the authority. They know.
Exactly.
They know better. If they tell us this is good, if they tell us that is good, that's the way it is. So, okay. So the point, the thing is that we need to get all of the opportunities we have to shout, so to speak, to make our voice heard.
And this is the opportunity.
Yes.
To make awareness among people, let's say that. And everything is on people, not on the authorities. If we won't consent, millions of us, everything will drop down. And this awareness is so important. I can understand that. All the legislation are used by people and ignored by people. Maybe the legislation is okay, but what do we do with legislation and everything? It's our part of responsibility.
This is a European Union citizens initiative, but there are millions of European nationals who live outside of the 27 nations. So whether you are, everybody here, I think, is from within the EU except me, okay? But there's plenty of Europeans who live in the United States, but their nationality. And so the signing of this initiative is for people who have nationality in any of the 27 nations, okay? And so if you are Nirvana, I'll pick on you, correct me if I'm wrong, you're an Italian national, but you're currently in the UK?
Correct.
Okay. Someone else could be in Malta and be a Irish citizen. Someone could be in the Netherlands and be an American, and they would not get to sign the petition. I actually spoke with Catherine Austin Fitz. Hopefully she'll join us at some point. She's an American citizen living sometimes in the Netherlands. And when I mentioned this to her the other day, she said, "Oh, I'll sign. That's great." But she can't because she's not a national of one of the 27 nations. Okay. And so expand your thinking. I think most everyone here lives within the nation that's listed for them. Okay. But Jamil, if you're on the street in the Netherlands and you had a petition, clipboard, and you were trying to get somebody to sign, step number one is to, let them know what the information is. But step number two is, well, are you a national, are you a citizen of the Netherlands? Or maybe you're here visiting from Belgium or France or wherever it may be. Okay. And so if, you could be in the middle of Amsterdam and you're talking to a bunch of Japanese tourists or Americans or people from Turkey. Okay. Well, they're obviously in Europe, but they would not be able to sign it. You have to be a national. Is that all? Okay. And so let me hand it over to Justina. Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so I am in the Netherlands, for example, like you say, and I'm in the street trying to collect signatures.
Yeah.
Does it make a difference whether I'm speaking to a national from France or Germany? Or so my question is, as long as it is somebody from within the EU, it doesn't matter whether it's Dutch or German or Belgian or French, right?
If you were like out in the countryside in the Netherlands, in a small town, the odds are much better that everybody there is actually a national citizen of Netherlands. Yeah. If you're in any big city, they could be from anywhere. Okay.
Exactly. There are people from anywhere. Exactly.
Right. And so the expansive nature of this, though, is we could bring people in from Thailand. We could bring people in from Australia who, if they are of European citizenship and they have an expat community, they could collect signatures wherever they may be with people who are citizens of any of the 27 nations.
Hi, Shabnam. Hi. And
Hi,
so this
everyone.
is hi. And this is pretty much where we are.
All right, so let me actually repeat something for Shabnam's benefit. Obviously from South Africa, but what we're talking about in this Zoom is the expansive nature of what is going on here, for the simple reason that people of European nationality, the 27 nations of the EU, obviously millions of them live outside of the EU. There's Europeans in South Africa, all throughout Africa, South America, North America, Australia, wherever. So those people obviously can sign the initiative. And so it doesn't really matter where you are in the world. If there's an expat community of the 27 nationalities, those are people that you can reach out to. And while there is the ease of the electronic signature system, taking the easy way out is not necessarily the smart move. The smarter move might be to actually interact with people, whether you do it digitally or however, on social media or whatever it might be, or in person, ideally, to make that human connection to another man or woman and show them the core fundamental ideas, which were very skillfully written, I must say, to, I think, be universally accepted. I think most people look at those 10 items, and I've literally watched people do it, and they go, yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. I mean, I was watching Jamil, right? And you're like, oh yeah, that one, right? So most people will read the 10 and they'll go, yeah, this, of course, right? And so then the next question is, well, not where do you live, but where is your citizenship? Where is your nationality? Where do you have a passport? Okay. And so some people, like myself, I could be anywhere in Europe, but I can't sign it because that's not my nationality. I don't have a European passport. Some people might have dual citizenship, and they would have to pick one. They could choose whichever. But the idea is that from an idea of connecting like-minded people everywhere on the planet. You could be in Thailand. Do you know anybody from Europe? You could be in Australia, New Zealand, Japan, wherever. Do you know somebody from Europe who's a citizen of one of the 27 EU countries? Would you sign the petition? And now you've got a new friend. You've got a new member of your personal relationships that you can build. And if that's part of an organization or whatever, this is going to be going on for a year. And so how many people, this is a question that I ask a lot of people. How many people do you know personally who can still think for themselves? It's an interesting question, right? Most people go, I got like 2 or 3 people. Okay. Well, what if you added a 0 to that and it became 20 or 30? Or what if you have 20 or 30 people and you add a 0 to that and you got a couple of 100 people? The idea behind all of this is it's a great way to expand the circle of people that you're closely connected to by shared ideals. If I may, Dustin and I had a conversation earlier today, and along with Xylee, and again, Justina, if I'm talking out of turn, you just bring me right back into alignment here. But one of the things that I know Dustin and Xylee have done a lot of is to coin a phrase, exhausting administrative remedies. And I understand this in US law, and I think it's very similar elsewhere. If you're trying to get into a court case because the government did something that you're not happy with, the court or the judge will say, well, did you do this, that, and the other in terms of dealing with this department and the bureaucracy? You got to go through the paperwork and the bureaucratic red tape, and you got to exhaust all of these things in order to get to the point where you say, hey, we've been doing everything that we're supposed to do as citizens, and we're not getting anywhere. We're going to take you to court. And I'm not saying we're going to court with this, but what I am saying is the European Union's Citizens Initiative process is the process by which citizens, if you can get 1 million signatures, they have to pay attention to you. You get a seat at the table, you get a conversation. And Justina, if I could pass that over to you, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but I think it bears repeating. There are steps in the process, and we're only at step 3. Okay. Yes. Step 4 is coming soon, collecting signatures. and then people say, well, then what? Okay, so I'll pass that on to you.
Yeah, perfect. Did you manage to open that PDF?
I have it. I'll see if I can dig it up. Yep.
If you can dig it out, that would be great.
Yeah.
Yes, so yes, that's what a lot of people look at it. I just keep saying, repeating, and it's true. I'll repeat it today. The fact that we will be able to first get through to mainstream media, because it's a mainstream media thing that we're doing. The fact that it is a European Commission, so it is, and I always say it in brackets, reputable, tool, right? And also recognize one, it's easier for us to get to that mainstream media with this information. Hey, we've actually got a citizens initiative. So the mainstream media is looking at it with an interest. And I actually had a couple of responses from a couple of mainstream medias asking me if I could elaborate a little bit more. That's the bit that opens the door. And then once that door is opened, well, our mouths can open to whatever we really want to say, which might be surprising to them, and we can add all the other things that previously we were not able to get through to through mainstream media with for the last 3 years, whichever things these are. And so that's one thing. The other one is that ability to show that there is that million or more if we're lucky, and I think we can. I think the most signed ever petition was One of Us petition, which was one of the early petitions, and that one raised 1.6 million signatures. We actually have someone who worked on that petition with us in the team now, so we've got an expert who knows what are the bad sides, what didn't work, what worked. And this is also very important, because while we were doing it, we made sure we've got someone who's already gone through this whole process. And that allows us to show that there is more of us, that that it's not just these crazy people that are on the sides constantly protesting and saying that they're not happy because their rights are being taken away, but that's actually a substantial amount of numbers and people that are aligning behind this wherever they are. And if they are, if we never had anything that could be presented with the amount of people that is behind it to, let's say, legal authorities, right? We do have a lot of petitions, declarations, but they ignore them. This one is kind of on their terms, right? So while we are able to then show that there is so many of us, we can also show that it's us all over the world, because there's lots of Europeans, like James said, living in the different countries. People are so different now. We have such a variety of people. The younger generations, which we're going to try to reach as well, because we think it might, trigger them, their health, their choice, their body choice, their consents and all that stuff. The younger generations are starting to get that too. And I always say that in regards to, like, my daughter who's just turned 18, she's a triple citizenship, citizen of the world. She's South African, she's Polish, and she's British. So, for her, this is like, she's okay, of course she can only use the Polish citizenship in that case. But again, it opens all the other doors for her, because she's the citizen of the world in a way, right? So that's the generation we want to reach too. And then we end up at that table, we're there, and now it's time for us to speak. And that's the part that is, yes, still far away, but we definitely know what mistakes previous initiatives made when they got that seat at the table, what didn't work, why they didn't achieve 100% what they wanted. And that's because, we have someone on our team who's done it before. So, this is pretty much the process that we're looking at. But above all, we will have the opportunity to connect between each other, and then use that for any further things that we're going to be doing and that they will be throwing at us.
I can have the document, and hopefully everyone can see that being shared right now. Yep. Okay. So the whole point is right here. Okay. That's the point.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. And I'll scroll down, and if you just want to go through this.
Yeah, so pretty much like they said, when we gather the million signatures, we can ask for a new law. And again, the fact that we're asking that we can be visible publicly, we can actually be seen, it's the bit that is important. So then we formed that citizens committee, and as you know, it's 7 of us. This was just pro forma thing that we needed to do. So we chose the 7 people from 7 countries, and they allowed us to proceed forward. Yes, we did meet that criteria that James is actually underlined here. If you're not sure whether this falls under the Commission's remit, the way we've had to make sure it works is that it does fall under the competence, which it did, and therefore once we formed the Citizens Committee, we registered this initiative. They checked whether it falls under their remit, and that will be the step 2, which we have done, which is the register your initiative. That has yes, it says that there's
I want to raise this issue because I bumped into this in Canada. A lot of people who were dealing with a petition. This is an initiative, but in Canada it was a petition, and it was sponsored by Leslyn Lewis, but it was put forth in Canada by a citizen. And this is not being driven by any member of the European Parliament. We hope and trust that they will support us and use it and promote it. But they're not allowed to be involved in this. And, from the standpoint of starting it, it's very clear. It's not a member of Parliament who's doing this. These are 7 people, regular people, citizens.
That's correct. And then somebody asks, how old do you have to be? Well, it's literally just underneath what that question there. In every country, you have to be 18, except for Austria. For some reason, it's 16. But all the other 26 out of 27 is the age of 18. You would be then later able to...
There's a couple that are 16. One is 17. It's all on the website. So don't count out the youth.
So then we got through we went through the Commission steps, we registered, it got approved, and we are here at the start of the collection for the signatures, which is the step 3. And again, what we're doing is, yes, they give us a year, but we really do want to speed it up. I know we're being bold with this one, but we are aware of the fact that there are reforms in EU in regards to treaties that is coming, which would take away the powers from countries towards the European Parliament. For us, it is important to start talking about it and making sure that people know. And this initiative also gives the opportunity to talk why we're actually doing this initiative, because this treaty, these amendments are coming, and that will be a news for some of the people who will get interested in initiative, but they might have never heard about the treaty, or they're really not interested in it at all.
I want to say something here. I think I just noticed something. I went looking for a map of the European Union, and I could not find a current map that only had 27 countries, because they all still include the EU. Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry, the UK. And so please clarify on this. The minimums that are associated with each country do not mean that you have to get the minimum from all 27 nations.
That's
you
correct.
Only need to get it from a quarter of 27. Here, they haven't updated their document since the UK left. We need the minimum in 7 different nations. And go ahead, Shabnam, you got your hand up.
There's a real opportunity here to change the face of what democracy really is. We know for a fact that the cartel and their minions in various parliaments are going to ignore whatever it is we do. But part of what we do is not because we expect them to listen to us. Part of what we do is see the opportunity to change the way democracy actually works or doesn't. And the second is to underline the point that Justina made about getting to young people whose lives are going to be severely impacted by all of these treaties and other instruments of mass destruction. Young people are politically active at an unprecedented scale right now around the world. In every country, they're on the streets. And so we have a real opportunity to mobilize with them and through them by engaging them through these various events that they're attending and mobilizing on.
Thanks, Shabnam. And so, Justina, if you could really talk about what this, where we're headed a year from now.
Yes, and then what we do once we have that million or more, which we are hoping to get, we get to the step 6, which is the floor is yours, and this is where we get to present the initiative to the European Commission. We've got a public hearing. It's all transparent, and you can see it, it's all recorded, it's all put out, and then these discussions go on from that public hearing. It's a tug of war back and forth between us and the commission and the group of people that is in front of there sitting at that table, and we are negotiating in a way. We've asked for legal stuff to be done in regards to informed consent and in regards to signing anything with the with organizations, and that these organizations, if they have anything to say within the European Union, need to be transparent. So there's a lot of stuff. It seems like it's nicely packed, but that is that step when we have the floor, which will be pretty important. And then that's it. I guess it gets to the step 7, which is mission accomplished. The European Commission will inform us of the actions that they intend to take. Now, this is why it's so important that through that process, we will be rallying MEPs already in the European Parliament, also our own Parliament members and our national parliaments, celebrities, as we say, that we want to get engaged, media, because really the more pressure we put, the more we're able to achieve. But again, as I said, it is important that we have a very good team of people sitting at that table and having these negotiations with the devil.
In the initiative, it registers some of the fundamental freedoms, but the first request, while there are 5 different facets to it, my take on it, and again, everybody here is welcome to correct me if I'm wrong in any way, is that there is a theme to this. And it's the idea that individuals have rights over their own bodily autonomy. And we don't necessarily have legislation in place in the European Union to protect that and punish people who violate it. Now, there are a lot of, wonderful sounding declarations and principles and all that sort of thing. But, when you go looking for implementing legislation, it comes up short. And so if you have a principle or a declaration, but people can break it and, not be in any way held accountable, there's a deficiency in the law. So I'm actually just going to plow through these, and then I'm going to hand it over to Justina and Helena, and hopefully everybody else will chime in. Request number 1, upholding human dignity and the recognition of informed consent. We urge the European Commission to propose a recommendation for members of state on the definition of informed consent. I challenge everybody here to go into your nation's laws or go into the EU law or United States law and find a legal definition of informed consent that's promoting the primacy of human dignity, freedom, and bodily autonomy, and in this case, within the European Union. This recommendation should prioritize the following key principles. Number 1, respect for individual autonomy and integrity. Should promote the fundamental principles of individual autonomy, integrity, and the prohibition of inhumane and degrading treatment within medical contexts. Recognize that informed consent means that every individual has the right to make informed decisions regarding their healthcare and treatment options for them and their children. Number 2, preservation of free consent in all circumstances. Free consent is crucial both in research, clinical trials, and in treatment contexts, even during emergencies. Gets into the Syracuse principles. These fundamental principles cannot be suspended for whatever reason. No exceptions are admitted. Informed consent should be freely given without undue pressure or coercion. Number 3, provision of accurate, understandable, and accessible information. Patients must be provided with accurate and accessible information about their medical conditions, available treatments, and potential risks and benefits. Transparent communication between healthy professionals and patients is essential. Number 4, comprehensive understanding of clinical trials and medical procedures. Patients should be should fully understand the nature, purpose, risks, and potential benefits of clinical trials, medical procedures, or treatments in order to make well-informed decisions. And number 5, recognizing the right to refuse or withdraw consent. Individuals have the right to refuse or withdraw consent at any point in their medical journey without facing unwarranted pressure or coercion. Healthcare providers should respect and honor patients' decisions. Now, we're going to stick to just request number 1 in today's Zoom. Kudos to whomever you all were that wrote these words, because I can't imagine how anybody could go, oh, no, I don't want any of that. This should be universally understood that laws need to be very clear. They need to be put in place. And the punishments for anyone violating those rights and freedoms should be clear. And I'm certainly not clear that there's any laws in the United States that truly support those fundamental principles. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that's why we're here. Justina, Helena, the floor is yours.
I just wanted to say that I'm very happy to yield my time to Helena, because she's the one who's drafted it all for us. And it's really amazing to work with someone like her, because she really listens to the citizens, which is so important, because we're all from different countries. We all wanted to put in something there. And then really, to be honest, we're here because she took all what we've been saying and shouting and screaming and put it all together. So I'm happy for her to kind of, elaborate on that subject.
Thanks, Justina. Yeah, it was, but to be honest, I wish you could have done much more. That we could have gone much further, but it's unfortunately not possible. Initially, this request was refused by the Commission. They asked us to review it and to redraft it, because we were asking for a proper legal directive or regulation, really setting forth definition of informed consent, and foreseeing penalties for violation, which that's what we wanted. But then the Commission cowardly came back and said, oh no, this is anything related to healthcare and medical topics. We don't have the power, the competency. This is in the sphere of member states, which is freaking hilarious considering what they did for the last 3 years, right? But then they have the power to sign the contracts of billions of euros with Pfizer and pharmaceuticals for vaccines. Then it's in their competency, and that's no longer medical or healthcare. Or to also put forward a COVID certificate app. So that was completely cooked and managed by the European Commission. And that, again, they have the power to do that, but God forbid that they have the power to define informed consent. So we had to go back, and unfortunately, we had to ask for a mere recommendation that they recommend the member states to impose this legislation. The good news is usually it works. When the Commission says something like recommends, the member states usually follow. So it's not so bad. But maybe if James, if you allow me, I would go back one step further to really the beginning of this initiative and what we really want, because again, we wish we could have gone much further. But it's not so much about the Commission. This initiative, it's a citizens' initiative. It's about us. It's about the citizens, the brave 7 citizens who are signing this document. But it's about the millions of signatures that we are hoping to gather, and that we will gather, I'm sure, much more than 1 million. This is the point. It's about raising awareness that everyone, individuals, not just citizens of the EU, but us as individuals, we hold all the power, and this is our body. We decide what procedures, medical procedures we are subject to. We decide what goes into our body. We decide over our children's health as well, because they're minors. And this is the whole my motivation when I drafted this was exactly that. And if you could, I was very aware of language. As you can see, I never The maximum I went was talking about emergencies. I refused to use the term pandemics, epidemics. I hate it. And language is very powerful. And I refuse to use their language. I think that this is giving them power. So I try to make it, again, like you said, so obvious that everyone would agree to this. Even if you're coming from the left, the right, whatever your age is, you agree that this is what you want for yourself and your families, right? You want to control, to make your own medical decisions. This is so obvious. I don't understand how anyone could have a problem with this. And we wanted to make it a little bit positive, so that like you said before, very very wisely, there is a lot of declarations, the Nuremberg Code, and the Human Rights Charter. So we know that informed consent bits and pieces are kind of mentioned in these legislations instruments, but there's nothing very specific. So we want to make it clear that we know our rights is our human rights. When it comes to this topic, we know that we are the only ones responsible for our medical decisions. No government, no EU official, no international organization has that power. So we just want it plain and simple in the law. And then I try to, this 5 points were kind of basically the definition of informed consent. What does it entail? It's not just, the doctor is saying something, this is good for you, though the risks outweigh the benefits. This is not informed consent. You really have to provide complete information, and in a way that the person understands it, and to move forward. Otherwise, it's not an informed decision. And it's so funny because, just my last point, everyone is so clear nowadays about informed consent when it comes to sex, right? Everyone knows, oh, no, if the woman says no, even if she wanted when it started, now if she says no down the line in the middle of the act, then the man has to stop. So it's very clear that you can withdraw consent at any time. But then when it comes to medical decisions, everyone plays dumb, and we don't know what we're talking about. So let's hope that this, brings a bit more awareness to the topic.
Go ahead, Paula.
Just a quick one. I think somewhere we should say that there is no medical intervention that is totally free of conflict of interest. This is what we are today, possibly for the past 150 years, more or less. So there we go. There is no one of the reasons why no one can impose you anything is because anything they discuss, there will always be some conflict of interest. And therefore, the decision has to be to the person who has to manage this conflict of interest. And it can be of a third party. I don't think this concept has been highlighted enough. But I think we should say this. To begin with, of course, every medication is toxic. So every medication, so it's not a matter of saying this is the benefit or, forget about that. No, it's the conflict of interest. This is an industry, and as an industry, there are conflict of interest. And so, it's simple, that's it.
And if I can add on that one, what it does is, this is why so nicely the second point, which we're not going to be discussing today, kind of entwines with the first one, because as we're going to be talking about informed consent and pushing that forward towards the European Commission, and yes, what Helena said, there's that pretend moment when they kind of cannot establish what that consent is. Then we can gradually slide into the fact that transparency is lacking. And with the informed consent, that transparency, which we're kind of talking about it enhancing in second point, that's another thing. So these organizations, the decision-making processes, etc. So I guess in a way, both of these come together really nicely, right? Because it is quite broad what we've put in here, but at the same time, I've heard this comment that it is too broad what we've done. But remember, when it's broad, it's open for interpretation. Therefore, it will not only be in medical procedures, it will also be in things like implementing IDs that we have been talking about. It will be in other things. So sometimes that bit that this is quite a broad initiative, well, might work in our advantage, because the other side will have to, think about what is it that we more can pull into this consent, right? We're not only talking about medical treatment. We're facing within the next year and a half quite a lot of changes. Some of them coming from United Nations that are wishing to work on the Pact for the Future, which we've not even been hearing about. And this one is talking about global governance. So underneath these 2 points, and the one that we're discussing kind of today and giving you a little bit more information, hides a lot of things that we can use to block for in the future.
Go ahead, Dustin Rosati, you're muted, but go right ahead. Yep.
Oh yeah, all of it's about that UN stuff for the future and all of that. And then they have their own quasi definitions. So one of the things that I think is super important about this initiative is that you're saying they deal with the procurement, right? So they can purchase for all of this, but then all of informed consent goes back to member states, correct? So if they're dealing with procurement and actually purchasing what they call health products for emergency pandemic preparedness and response, which are actually still investigational and still research products, that's really important to get them to define it. So this is a totally awesome initiative because it allows the people who are actually dealing with the procurement to have to define it. That's really important. So I think that's really brilliant. And I was going to get at the definition here of biomedical research. Hold on, it's on this other computer. Let me read it here. But we have, we took 10 years here in Costa Rica, our legislators, we had a 10-year moratorium on all human research, right? And it's because they were experimenting on everybody. They're totally crazy. But what they did is there was a lawsuit to sue, and everybody made the legislators create a new biomedical research law. So the Supreme Court said we can't do anything without the definition of informed consent. We're going to need to deal with all the conflicts of interest, how you guys are saying. And then they wrap it all up into a biomedical research law. It took us 10 years to create ours, and it was created in 2015. As of today, they're violating that same law that they just created. But some of the laws that they created were so beautifully written. So here's the definition of informed consent in a biomedical research context, which, keep in mind, a lot of their health products for pandemic preparedness, it applies to. And the WHO says that this is biomedical research products, the COVID vaccines, all of them. They say this is biomedical research. So let's go into it. Informed consent under biomedical research here is the process of information and understanding through which a person voluntarily expresses their desire to participate in biomedical research. It's totally different than everybody else's definition of informed consent, but I think it's really important. We have to want to be part of experimented on. Anyway.
Let me dive in, if I can, and share this page again. Helena, if you would be so kind as to speak to each one of these different facets to what is in here. I know I went running down through them, but I think when people see this pile of words, it's a little daunting. And they don't come away with, hey, there's an umbrella here, but it's not just biomedical research. It's much more inclusive. So if you would be so kind as to just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and say whatever you wish to say about why each one of these is here, that would be much appreciated.
Like you said, for me, the biggest umbrella is human dignity. That's the main principle behind informed consent and bodily autonomy. It's about our human dignity. And this is, it sounds a bit broad, but it's exactly what we want to protect and defend. And so the number one is it's basically the human rights subjacent to informed consent. Number two is the freedom part of it. So that means how could I say it, non-pecuniary. There cannot be any material consequence or benefit or penalty, and for providing this consent. So if consent is bought, it's not free, right? Again, with sex, we know this. Prostitution is the definition of it's not consented in relationship because there's money involved. And the same here, if you're taking a medical procedure because you will lose your job, then it's not free. You're not consenting to it. There is a consequence or a benefit that's material. So it really needs to be free. That's the definition. Also the definition that I'm sorry, I don't know the name of the person who spoke before, but that sounded brilliant. That definition of informed consent. It's really a desire that you're doing this. It's really your free will. That's the main, the main topic here. Number 3, number 4 are very similar. It's really about the accuracy of information. And for me, it's very important. It's also very important. It's understandable and accessible. So if you're talking to a 90-year-old explaining what you're doing to them, it needs to be in terms that they understand. Also to a child, the same, or to everyone. The information, and you cannot just list a bunch of words like they do in medical advertisement for drug advertisement in the US at a crazy speed. This doesn't count as informed consent. You're not providing accurate, accessible, and understandable information to the potential patient. And that people need to understand what they're doing. And this risk-benefit analysis is extremely important. And no doctor does this, especially with these vaccines. This was not done for sure. And finally, the recognition of the right to refuse or withdraw at any time. So even if you already, if you took the first dose, whatever, you can, or in the middle of the process, you can withdraw your consent, because it's always yours to give. Again, free will.
Wonderful. Dustin and Zaidi, we had a good half-hour conversation before this. I want to encourage you to just go on a 5 or 10 minute rant.
Yeah, so one thing that we were talking about earlier is the Syracuse incorporating some of the awesome ideas from Syracuse principles. When we're talking about strengthening the laws and creating them, right? So with Syracuse principles and the MEURI ethical framework that the WHO put out, they're totally violating it. Don't get me wrong, but it's beautiful. And well, there's parts of it that are pretty lame, but almost the whole thing is amazing. And it explains in no uncertain terms that, I think it was number 3 of yours, it would need to be expanded to say that in those fact sheets, they say that it's not informed consent and prohibited unless the entire doubts of the entire scientific community were expressed as to the doubts of safety and efficacy. What do? They censor everybody, right? So that all violates the MEURI ethical framework. There are 4 pillars, and it violates pillar 2 of community involvement. So they call it, you cannot have informed consent according to the WHO without community involvement. Can you believe it? They say that's their actual documents. That's their actual rules. Anyway, that's a really important one to be able to expand upon about the informed consent needing the definition of and then I think that there is a huge difference between what is investigational. We're having this huge debate between all the experts who are researching. They're getting away with all of this cooperative research, and they're calling things one. It is an experiment, but then they claim it's not an experiment. It's not clinical research. It's this or that. So there really does need to be definitions in our laws here. We have 3 different definitions of informed consent. We have one in the health law for things that are already approved. We have one, I believe, in the medical morality law, which incorporates Nuremberg Code and all these. And then we have another one for biomedical research. So if we're thinking of informed consent, legally speaking, there are levels of informed consent. And what we noticed, if you put them side by side, it gradiently gets stronger to biomedical research is what I really want to be experimented on. You know what I mean? So those would be really helpful to look at and incorporate some of they have really strong wordings and really cool stuff.
Yeah, Nirvana, you got your hand up?
I just wanted to make a comment on the actual idea of consent, because here we're obviously talking about informed consent to have something done to yourself, but even just consent in general. I work for the NHS in the UK, so I work in healthcare, and even just, for example, consenting to sharing information, your GP. In the UK, it's not always respected. In fact, it's very now less and less respected. More and more, when I look up patients' notes, I find that overruled consent. No, I mean, sorry, the decline to share information is being overruled because blah blah blah. They all have a reason for overruling. Of course, they can say because the person is mentally incapacitated or because of this or that. So I just wanted to sort of somehow it's a tricky situation when it's written and they do all this big the NHS, the government in general in the UK, they always big themselves out about respect and consent, but really in the NHS it's clear. And I remember probably 2 or 3 years, or maybe 4 years ago, before COVID, the UK column, maybe some of you are aware of this channel, is a UK alternative channel, let's say, and they were looking through the actual versions of just the definition of informed consent in the NHS for different areas, and they came up with about 70 different definitions. So it's a tricky area. I don't know if I make sense, but it's one thing to have it and to have it written, and one thing what they mean, because they always find a way to overrule.
One of the words that I have a question about for both of you, the preservation of free consent. I'm not 100% sure what that phrase means, but Justina, what I'd like for you to talk about, we had a conversation about the difference between actually getting someone to say yes and give their, affirmative consent, as opposed to some kind of implied consent where, oh, if you don't say no, we're going to do this to your children and all that kind of stuff. If you could straighten out for me, within the context of the initiative, please talk about the difference between implied consent, where if you don't say no, then it means yes, versus the need to get an actual signature, yes. And as Dustin and Xylee said, yeah, I really want you to experiment on me. Okay. Floor,
Sure.
the floor is yours. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, this is based on the fact that at the moment what we've got lots of laws and things coming through, and unfortunately, it isn't about us agreeing to them. It's just the responses that are coming are, well, it's on the website, your government website. You have been informed. If you haven't read it, it's really your problem, right? Because we have done it. And this is what we've got at the moment. The information is there. It doesn't mean that, if it's there, the government has provided you, you should educate yourself. So I think what we're trying to do is kind of put it the other way around. And it has to be that consent must be from us. We have to say yes or we have to say no. If you don't receive both, then you cannot. If you receive a no, if you don't receive a no, that doesn't mean we've agreed. I very often put it, and I said that to you in regards to my daughter's school, where she was when I was getting letters saying that they will be getting shots for flu. Well, they won't be shots, they'll be the nasal sprays, and they're giving me the information. Here you go. If you don't want it, let us know. Well, no, you need to ask me if I agree for her to even have them. My silence is not a yes. And I think this is one of the things that we are missing here. It's a key missing ingredient, which we don't have. And this is one that we're trying to push through as well.
Xylee, Dustin?
Agreed, Justina, for sure. And here in our laws and the WHO laws say that it has to be expressly written down, your informed consent. So that's really important to know. And that's all I wanted to say about that. They expressly say it has to be written. Oh, it also might help to attack their waivers of informed consent, maybe put limits on their ability to waivers. That's one thing we've been thinking about for a while. Yeah, so while we're saying what is our positive right to have it, what's their right to limit it? And maybe we put limits on them better, because they do waive it under, they say it's not in our right to know. They have some tricky wording. It's not in our best interest to know.
Spurious wording.
Just bringing that up.
Hopefully you and Helena can get together, because my understanding is that there's a lot of well-crafted, well-written law in Costa Rica that can serve as, at the very least, a memory jogger or an idea generator thought-provoking, brainstorming, how do you find the right words to make a recommendation? Hey, do it like Costa Rica, maybe, or do it like the WHO says it's supposed to be, but they don't actually do it, that kind of thing.
We actually pinpointed.
Brilliant. Thank you.
We pinpointed a ton of their best laws. We've pulled them out because we're taking them to court right now, and the WHO. And so we're picking all the best things that they're supposed to do. So we have really brilliant wording. We can definitely, they took 10 years to write these laws. Unfortunately, they're breaking them, but that gives us the opportunity to write in the laws mechanisms to defend human rights, mechanisms to enforce it. We can strengthen it. And you definitely want to see some of the laws they wrote here. They're brilliant. Okay. And it covers everything about all of the conflicts and everything, and criminalizes it. Yes.
This was extremely helpful. Like I said, this is just a bit the initial draft that opened the door to this initiative, because we were to be very careful, because most of them, they refuse, and we wouldn't get this opportunity. After this, it's up to us, to everyone promoting the initiative, to say whatever they want to get the signatures. So that's why we made it general and broad. You have the floor. You have the possibility, whatever is more important to you in these topics, use it, promote it, and get the signatures.
I'm going to dive right into the second request of the Citizens Initiative. This is a little bit different than the first one, which was primarily about informed consent. And this is, we request the European Commission to introduce a legal act that enhances transparency and access to information in the European Union decision-making processes. I'm just going to run through this pretty quick. It's relatively small. Mandating greater transparency by calling for the publication of agendas, meeting minutes, internal reports, emails, and SMS. Number 2, disclosing lobbying activities by establishing a public register of lobbyists' names, not just organizations, and their interactions with European Union officials. Number 3, prohibiting secretive meetings. European Union officials should not participate alone in secret and secretive meetings. Representatives of citizens and local, national, and European parliamentarians should be present. Number 4, evaluating public interest over private interest. Mechanisms should be set up to evaluate the prevalence of public interest over private interest, especially concerning trade secrets that may affect public policy objectives like public health. And last but not least, certainly, establishing sanctions for violations. Effective sanctions and penalties should be put in place for EU officials who violate the rules above. And so let me hand it over to Justina and Helena. Talk amongst yourself and share what you can with, how you got to this point.
Sure. So again, going to first begin, starting with the background, like yesterday, like the first demand, there is a lot of bits and pieces everywhere about this topic, which is basically anti-corruption. And there is the code of conduct for EU officials. There are a few bits of legislation, but there is nothing that really addresses all these points that we have in our second request in a systematic and structured way, and with comprehending and also comprehensive of penalties for violations. This is very important, because right now I couldn't find anything. There is no, yes, of course there is some ethical rules, they have to behave, but there is no, from what I could find, there is really no effective penalties from violations of these obligations. And so that's what we wanted to bring forward. And I'm very happy that this passed. Actually, this was one of the topics, the demands that we had that passed at the first time. Remember, Justina, it was immediate that they said, okay, yeah, we can do this. So I was very surprised, because this is really the Commission basically policing itself. And but in the end, it's true. They have no way to refuse it. Like with the other demand, where we said, this is no, this is medical. This is for the member states. This is healthcare. And in this case, no, it's within your competency. So they couldn't come up with we are not. The Commission is not competent for this topic. And also, there is no recommendation. It's really we are allowed, and that's what we are doing. we are demanding a legal act. So directive, regulation, both work. Regulation would be even better because regulation, the member states don't have to transpose it to their individual legal systems. Regulation is immediately effective. It enters into force in the European country member states directly. With the directive, they have to approve. They have 2 years to approve. A legal act, a national legal act to transpose that directive. So, but both work, so that's not an issue. And this is basically the trust part of our initiative, right? It's trust and freedom. The freedom, you saw it yesterday with the first demand, where we are demanding informed consent, free will, respect for our bodily autonomy, for our human dignity. This is a trust part. The trust is, I think it's for us, it's individual, that we trust the institutions, right? These institutions are there. They have so much power, and they are demanding to control so much of our rights and our lives. And so we have to trust them. And there's no trust in this moment, like the things are. It's kind of difficult to trust them. And we had two specific phenomenons or occurrences in mind when drafting this second demand. For me, it was personally which I think is abhorrent. The case I'm sure you heard, even the ones that are not in Europe. Ursula von der Leyen, she negotiated the Pfizer contracts with Mr. Burla by WhatsApp, and she's refusing to release that information. This is a big scandal. And it's insane that you can negotiate billions of euros of contracts by WhatsApp, and the European citizens are uninformed, are not aware. This is this shouldn't be possible. And so this is exactly what we are trying to prevent by demanding access to information, that we know how the decision was taken, what was the decision-making process. And this is extremely important. And the second occurrence was actually in my hometown of Lisbon. This year in May, the Bilderberg meeting took place. And there were 3 EU officials, very high ranked, participating. And again, this is abhorrent. This should not be allowed. And actually, we saw that there was a question being raised to Parliament so far in May already, but so far no one answered. Actually, 3 questions. There was citizens who came up. Actually, one citizen, a French woman, she asked the question in Parliament. I have it here, and she asked what motivated the 3 commissioners to attend the meeting at the Bilderberg meeting in Lisbon, and what was their mission? Can the Commission provide details of the topics discussed during the meeting and explain how those discussions will influence EU politics? And third, how can the Commission protect itself from any undue influence from certain global elites? And I think this is actually brilliant, because this is exactly what we had in mind when we drafted this. This should not be allowed. This is insane. EU officials are working for the European people, and the Bilderberg meeting is completely secretive. There's no, we just get bullet points of the agenda. We just get, we will discuss AI. Yeah, great. What about AI? So, if you're participating as a EU official, which they are, these 3 people, they went there in their capacity as EU officials, then the European public should be informed exactly of what was discussed, and ideally even have access to recordings and minutes of those meetings. And so this is what we are demanding in this second request. We call it requests, but in the end, this one is actually a demand.
Yeah, so if I could just add, exactly, this is the point, and that exchange of messages between von der Leyen and Mr. Burla was just something unacceptable. This is why, as you can see it in that first point of that enhancing transparency, Helena has added there. And that meeting, Bilderberg meeting, which was again should not have taken place, that the officials, the representatives go there, is just one of many. This one's just been the recent one, but I mean, we have them going to World Economic Forum in the same capacity as the representatives of European Union. We've got them going to the World Health Organization private conferences, which is one of the conferences that takes place in September in Berlin every year, which is the World Health Summit. And again, they are there. I know, I was there in person. I've seen them there. So for whatever reason, these people are there. They also have private meetings during the 3 days, for example, in the meeting in Berlin, in the conference in Berlin. And yet we are absolutely not advised of it. Most of them will not be saying that they've been there. They might have tweeted about it, that they went in support, but they do omit disclosing that they had private meetings with these people in there. Unless we're inside, we don't know this. We kind of know because, I did go and I've seen it with my own eyes. So how many more meetings of such private meetings of such nature have they been attending over the last years, where they represent, potentially thanks to the fact that they've been chosen to these positions to represent us, they then get to be sitting at the table with the private corporations, private organizations, companies, and as an example of that specific meeting, World Health Summit, they rub shoulders with people like the head of Bloomberg, the World Trust, the Bill Foundation, etc., etc. The discussions that they are then having, how do they affect what is later being implemented? And of course, this is the lack of this transparency that we're seeing. So I guess that's why it's so important. And like Helena said, we're actually asking here for a directive, which is something that should have been done a long time ago. However, we also, the reason it's good that we're asking for it, because, there should be different people looking at that directive, creating it and implementing it, not them or not their buddies. And that's the important factor as well.
Paula, you got your hand up?
Yes, I think historically this is the so-called East India Trading Company model, which was born under the auspices of the British Empire, where essentially private groups of bankers or businessmen of some sort would go in mission to infiltrate governments all over the world to get the deal they wanted. Isn't that exactly what Burra did with so it's an old model of that reflects also the project of discrediting political institutions. It's not new. And one of the reasons I'm saying this, I think that this notion of going back to history, and finding some historical roots is important, because it tells us that this has been going on for a number of centuries, number one. Number two, we shouldn't get discouraged because, they took centuries to do this, so we need to be patient. But at the same time, and number three, we need to be vigilant anytime, because the history is telling us that these things have been going on for a long time. And we in a way, we didn't pay attention to it. So be patient, pay attention, and remember, this is not done in a couple of weeks or months. It's not burla. It's very old.
Yep. Let me share this document again, and Helena and Justina, if y'all could go piece by piece, just give a little bit more detail to refresh, each of these 5 items.
So the first one is it's the trust part. There can only be trust with transparency. So this is the bigger principle, and for that we want to again be a part of the decision-making process. We want to understand how EU officials make their decisions in office. And for that we want much more information, because right now we get some minutes, but again, bullet points, nothing. The discussion, we want to understand who was against it, who was for it, We need much more information than we have right now, especially the bigger meetings like that, right? If you're discussing billions of euros of taxpayers, that we know how it was, how they were spent and how it was decided to give them to Pfizer. And then the second point, the lobbying activities. We want a public register of lobbying names, but we want people, because right now there is already a public register list of lobbyists. I think lobbying is, I have many issues with it, but apparently it's still legal. Okay, but then we want to know who is talking to who, and not just the organization. If you say Pfizer, it's a world. I want to understand who in Pfizer, who each person in which foundation. So we want people, not just the organizations. This is very important. Then the third point is exactly done was the one done for Bilderberg, right? Prohibiting secretive meetings. But there, like Justina said, there are tons of other meetings. WEF is actually happening next door to me. It's a little bit more open because the media is allowed inside. But not all meetings, of course, just some of them. Bilderberg is completely shut down from mainstream media. Okay, although they are participating as the heads of the owners and the CEOs of media companies are there, but they don't report on it, which is another disgusting consequence. And then the fourth point is evaluating public interest over private interest. So again, reminding that these individuals work for us, and which we very well know that this is not how they see themselves. So it's understanding how these their decisions affect us, and therefore they have to answer to us, especially in something as important as public health. And finally, the most important point for me, the establishing sanctions for violations, the penalties and effective penalties and sanctions for these violations, which right now we are lacking in the other legislation that's like laying around, which is covering one or two points of this, but not in a structured, systematic way, and definitely not foreseeing sanctions and penalties.
I just want to touch on the very first paragraph and the first part of it. We request that the European Commission introduce a legal act. In my knowledge of legal language, a initiative is exactly that. The end result, the end goal is to initiate a new law. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the idea, is that...
Yeah, you're correct.
Okay, is that European Union law ultimately would be changed and hopefully improved to implement, many of these ideas here.
Exactly. Anti-corruption, transparency, legal package or legal act. That would be the idea.
Yeah. And also, I guess the most important, for me, of course, because I'm like violations and sanctions, that's the bit that I really my one is the one, of course, and the five. All of them are important, but the last one is so important, because I honestly believe that if anybody abuses their power in the way that it has been now abused, the response is should be very swift and quick. These people should not be in power. They should be stripped of their power, and if that means that they're losing their job and they have an ability to come back to such posts in the future, then maybe this is something that should be definitely put in place. We have so many officials, whether they're on the national level or European level, that really hard abuse their positions. So if we can push for sanctions for these violations, and even when we discuss things like, there's the only law that we've got practically now is if somebody breaks GDPR in UK, in London, in EU, right? Then they might have some financial penalties connected to it. There is no such thing as going to jail or being stripped of their job or anything like this. And these are the things that we're really struggling with at the moment. We do not have anything established that can put any sanctions for such violations that we put in the second point.
Exactly.
I mean, I think around the world, not just in the EU, question number one really has to be, well, if you think someone is infringing on your rights and your freedoms, breaking any of these beautiful declaration of rights and all that sort of thing, if you can't find a section of the code or a regulation, that is a criminal code that has a penalty attributed to breaking, any of the rules or regulations, they know they can get away with it. There's no penalty. Go ahead, Paula.
About the time, once the million signatures have been collected, what is the model? Because, in the UK, we collected the signature and already we've done it how many months ago now, and we are still waiting for this discussion about the amendments. And they are not telling us neither if, when, etc. So you said this already, I'm sure. But so that's my question. But if it's not a legitimate one, don't answer.
Paula, let's talk about that after. There's some interesting news coming with that particular thing. In that particular quote unquote petition, there is an EU petition system, but this is an initiative system, and so ultimately, in the one that you're talking about, they don't really have any requirements that they have to respond to it. But in this, essentially, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, it amounts to a discussion and a seat at the table. And I'll let Justina and Helena talk more about that.
Yeah, so the petition equivalent of the UK petition would be the EU petition system, which is a bit different. If you make a petition, you will get a hearing with the committee, and then the committee will decide whether it will do it. With initiative, it's different. That's not the process. Let's call it, that the petition is like level 1, but the initiative is a little bit higher bar because it goes to the European Commission, not the Parliament, right? So this is a different procedure. So once we raise it, we verify the signatures. We are then open to sit at the table and tell them this is what we demand. And you've seen what we demand because we demand 1 and 2, and here you've got what we're doing, and then we negotiate, as we call it.
And also another difference is that in the end, the initiative that's why the initiative is so much more difficult to get through and to achieve. In the end, the Commission really has to come up with some legal acts if we get over 1 million signatures, they really have to comply. So they have to come up with something. Maybe it's not going to be what we want. It's going to be not drafted exactly as we want it, but it will be something. They will have to, especially with this second point, they will have to come up with a legislation, with a legal act that comprises all these topics and that really imposes sanctions. Again, I don't know what kind of sanctions they will come up with. We will try to guide them into getting the ones we want. But still, that's why it's more effective than a petition, for sure.
Try to push them as far as we can. This is why it's so important. With the first one, like you said, there will be a recommendation. But again, I want to stress, we had recommendations for last 3 years, which were a recommendation from the health organization, and these have been implemented. So that opens us opens the door as well. If we do get that, once we get the recommendation for the point 1, that we might have a precedent here. If our recommendation will not be so widely respected as that one, well, again, this is going to be a bit of a tug and pull, and seeing which way we can use the fact that we have recommendation, but our one is ignored. But the other one, for some reason, everybody was taking it. So again, lots of things that are possible here.
And also the bigger issue, like I said yesterday. For me personally, it's about the millions. It's about having a voice. It's about being able to say, look, we are millions. You have to respect our voices. You have to listen to us. An initiative gives us that kind of power. A petition is 100K signatures. An initiative is 1 million. It's very different. And then we can really say we are millions. You have to listen to us.
My understanding from their website, maybe it's changed with these recent new ones that were added, but they said that over the entire span, I think since maybe 2007 or 2009, when this was first begun, there had been 100 groups that got their initiatives approved by the committee. And
107.
107 now. And on their website, it said that there were 9 who got the million votes, or yeah. I should say signatures. And so, you know, it's not easy, right? But what it does is it earns you a place at the table, because Justina, you said, you know, like level 2 and maybe level 1 is a petition. Well, level 0, no offense to anybody, but it's all these commercial petitions and declarations and proclamations and things that many groups do ostensibly to build a database. And you know, they don't have any legal authority at all. Okay. In the UK, at 10,000 signatures, you get they do have to give you a response. And so, you know, you at least have their words on paper. And so with this initiative with a million signatures, we're doing our responsibility in, you know, any democratic representative situation in the United States. If you don't reach out to your congresspeople or senators and tell them what it is you want, you haven't done your job. So, you know, in a European Union wide sense, you know, what is this? 1 out of 300 or 400 people in the EU say, yes, this is what we want. It's actually a small percentage. But if you don't say what you want, you're not going to get it. And this is the official way that you do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I think, you know, we got into 107. That's where we are. Mm-hmm. You know, it's already a big step. If you look at it from a perspective of timeline, since 2007, like you said, through the Lisbon Treaty, when it actually, they decided they will implement something, the tool for democracy for the citizens to be able to voice their, you know, what they want to the Commission and to the European Parliament. You are correct. The number is scary. If only 107 made it through the process, then it's scary. That means they're saying that we have a democratic tool for, but really, you know, how widely are we able to use it? So yeah, we've kind of ticked the box for that, which I'm super proud, and I'm so grateful to Helena and all the others that we've worked on it. We made the 107. That's where we are. If we can make that these over a million, which the number is below, you know, below 10 at this point.
Yeah, it would be the 10th. Yeah, let's make it 10.
So if we can become the 10th one, it will be amazing. And yeah, definitely would mean that we are doing something. And like you said, I agree. Of course, I understand all the declarations and petitions, etc. I totally do. Again, we need to look at what will be the end game, as we say, in this. Are they achieving something? Will they even get heard? This one will get heard because they won't have a choice. I'll give you an example of Bulgaria. I know that George, who is the representative for Bulgaria, he's going to be, for example, doing an event. When they will be going out, they will be setting out a tent and they will be speaking to people. Maybe some of the countries will do a protest on the day to say it's about the initiative. We want to protest this, you know, power grab that is happening, and this is what we're doing. So what it does, it gives you an opportunity, if you wish to create an event, you know, announce them, say to people that this is happening. If they want to come meet and, you know, see the other people who are working on this initiative. At the same time, because the initiative is so broad, so nicely generic, it gives you an opportunity to talk to people about all the other things that we've been talking over the last 3 years, right? So, yeah, this is what we kind of suggest. Of course, every country and every every person in the country can do it differently, but it gives you that option to do that outreach, whether it is through an event, whether it is through a conference in your country, whether it is through a protest, or whether it is through some other type of event that you wish to create, that will bring you people maybe to your organization that you're doing, right?
What I am feeling that this is spectacular for, beyond just where you live, realize that outside of the 27 nations, probably most obviously Switzerland and the UK, there are many, many European nationals that live outside of the 27 nations, all around the world, quite frankly. Go ahead, Per, ask your question, and I'll dig up the English version again.
Yeah, it's just when is the deadline? We start the 28th of November with the signings, but when is the deadline?
Yes, so the deadline, we have a year to collect these. Of course, we are aiming to do as much damage with the signatures as we can before end of May, because we know that there are meetings for the WHO. So what we're doing is we are aiming to do it quicker. It will be a Guinness World Record, I'm assuming, but hey, we try.
Justine, I'd like for you to talk a little bit about the two highlighted areas there. I don't know if you can see them. I'll try to make them a little bit bigger.
I can't really see them, but yeah.
And
sorry,
how upholding human dignity and recognition of informed consent.
Right.
Number one is of a different legal nature than number two. This one is, we urge the European Commission to propose a recommendation to the nations, whereas number two, enhancing transparency and empowering citizens, we request the European Commission to introduce a legal act, okay? And so if you could just talk about the difference between introducing a legal act and proposing a recommendation.
Right. So I think for the difference at this point is, with the first one, what we're doing is asking for a recommendation. We were refused. We were not allowed to ask for a directive or a regulation. However, if such a recommendation goes through, it is then sent off to the 27 countries. And as an example, I will give you a different type of recommendations, which we had over the last 3 years, which was the recommendation in regards to pandemics that we had. All the 27 countries have actually gone and used the recommendation, and they were literally using all of the recommendations that were given by the EU. So yes, it's technically just a recommendation. However, if we manage to push it, it will give us a precedent if our recommendation isn't being taken by the 27 countries. And I guess I'll leave the space here for lawyers to kind of ponder on what I've just said. The second one is much stronger. It's not a regulation. So as we go, we've got recommendation, directive, and then regulation. Regulation, normally, if it is implemented, it goes straight through into law, and then it's pushed on the 27 countries. With a directive, yes, it's almost similar, except for the fact that if it does go through, it takes a little bit longer. It takes a little bit longer to get in. So it might be a year or two before that specific directive is also pushed onto the European countries. So the second one gives us a bit more power over the laws that we are trying to implement. Just to reintroduce, it's myself from Poland, Georgie is from Bulgaria, and then the third one is Andrea, who is from Croatia. He's also one of our main 7 that we've got.
Okay. It's quite broad initiatives. I mean, if we are going to succeed to get 1 million signatures, there are many contacts, there are many explanations, there are many motivations to be done in order to get those signatures, to get people, 1 million people to yeah. I've been involved in a couple of those campaigns, and typically when gathering signatures, each signatures takes at least 5 minutes of from small talk to, I mean, trying to come to the point. So quite some efforts, and with those broad statements, I could just foresee a little bit of a challenge there. But maybe you have thought that through, how to communicate, as you said, that I mean, this elevator pitch, this 30-second thing which should grab someone. Yeah.
I would like to
Sure.
I would like to take a crack at that,
Yeah.
but let me go to Paula. She's got her hand up. Go ahead, Paula.
Yeah, thank you for your observations. I guess, as they say, there is no free lunch. That is, we need to be prepared, essentially. So these are broad, but as Justina has pointed out before, it allows you to bring up many sorts of examples. So you say, okay, look at what happened in this case, and look at what happened in that case, and look at what in the other case. Well, all of these cases would be targeted by this principle, or whatever you want to call it. But we need to know the cases. We need to know enough well that we can explain why these cases would be contested under the principles we're advocating.
Justina, as always, correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe this is an elevator pitch. If you went to a doctor or a healthcare practitioner and they convinced you to do some sort of treatment, take a drug, get an injection, do a surgery, whatever it might be, and you learned that they did not really properly inform you, they did not give you all of the information. Do you know the law in your country that you could accuse them of breaking? And so you can get into malpractice and all that kind of thing. But one of the reasons why they're getting away with all of the things they're getting away with is the laws are inadequate or corrupt. And that's what this is trying to address in the long run. Go ahead, Georgie.
I would like to say that the question which you raise is very important, but I'm absolutely sure that every country has some kind of procedure how to inform their citizens. For example, I'm giving you two countries which I'm sure that we have it, Bulgaria and Romania. What they are doing, what we are doing, and they are doing. Informed consent is inside the law of health. So you cannot perform any kind of any procedure without you are signing such a document in the hospital, in the cabinets, in the laboratories, wherever. That means that we put some efforts, and Romanians also put many efforts, because they are over 5 times bigger than Bulgaria, 4 times bigger than Bulgaria's population. And we got so-called paper consent. In Bulgaria, this thing was developed, created, and implemented by the so-called Center for the Protection of the Rights in Healthcare. It's very important and very, very strong organization. You can remember it. Center for the Protection of the Rights in the Healthcare. So this consent is implemented here. It is a legal part of all procedures performed over you. And the second thing which I wanted to say is that as for these rights, which we just mentioned, Justina just mentioned, and Justina put it in these 2 points which we are taking signatures for. It is done here, and I'll try to extend it to Greece, because a lot of friends of mine who has they're doctors and they're practicing in the north part of Greece. So yesterday they asked me to help them, and thank you, Justina, that she resent to me everything what we had created in. She's the engine. And I extended to them. So I think this initiative will be successful from one side, and from the other side, informed consent is something which could be put in paper in such a way that which could be understood understand by every one citizen, even the most uneducated one. Thank you.
If I may elaborate on that, what George is talking about is an informed consent of a patient when they go for surgeries, etc., etc. Now, what we've got in this initiative is kind of part of it, but also different. We're talking about something that, for example, is showed up in the last 3 years. So there has been an emergency, and the government has kind of overridden stuff and decided to implement a product that has not actually went off through the whole process of getting all the, checks and balances, because there was an emergency. So if you look at the first point that we've got with the informed consent, and then you go into, these underpoints, the bullet points, so to call it, that we've got, we have in the second point, the preservation of free consent in all circumstances, which is very different from when you're a patient and you go to a hospital and you have a surgery, right? You're looking at stuff like even during emergencies, which is what we've added, because what we're doing is we had an emergency where it's very difficult to say whether people were provided all the full information about the stuff that was happening, and then really did they give an informed consent to the product. I'm trying to use words because I know this will end up viral, to the products that have been used, right? So there should not be exceptions, even in emergency situations where we have to give the informed consent to people. So just because we had a situation of an emergency, that should not have override my right to say yes or a no in this situation. So I guess this is the way we're trying to explain it to people, right? Because there must be that respect of the individual autonomy and decision-making process in each person, which is currently not there. And we've experienced it. Yes, it's been a push. Now we know that, they're learning from the mistakes of the last 3 years and what has come right and what happened, what was right and what was wrong. However, the decision had a massive impact and a fallout and snowball effect on many people, whether it was medically. We today have a lot of people who regret decisions that they made over the last 3 years, etc. And now it is the question of whether they were the human rights weren't violated, whether they weren't pushed towards doing something, whether they actually gave an informed consent. So such a definition of informed consent, it has not been formed by the EU itself. We're talking here in an aspect of the EU. And I guess that's one of the things that we can discuss when we talk to people. And also making that stress on the fact that we should be able to refuse, right? And if we do, that is, that is our choice that we have as well.
George, I want to ask you at some point to reach out to me, because I really want to talk to you more about what you mentioned with the czpz.org. I think from what you've said, I don't want to overstate it, but if that is available to people in Bulgaria, 26 other nations need to look at that and say, well, if that is what they've done there, why don't we have something, along those lines, or better, and new ideas come out? and so you said something also about Romania. I don't know if you said that it was also
Bulgaria and Romania. The other country is Romania. This has come out because a lot of bad things has been done in Bulgaria in the period of 2010-2012. And after that, we were pushed by the circumstances that we must have something universal in the hospitals, in the doctors' practices, which every one of us is about to sign. By the way, I have to say to Justina that this is it has been extended for the house of old people. It's extended to some houses of because we are now closing the houses for orphans in Bulgaria. It was extended to the kindergartens. It was extended especially for the small kindergartens of the age between 1 and 3. So this consent was spread all over the country, and we are improving it every day. So this will be when I start, not only me, of course, all our supporters, when they start to gather signatures, for them will be very easy to sign down, just to put their signatures on the paper, because they already are inside this situation. That's it. The question, the answer of your question, James.
Paula, we've got about a minute and a half, so you have the floor till we're all done. You are muted.
If you're talking about this informed consent, as Justina was saying before, related to surgical intervention, I think maybe this might be a European thing, because we also have the same thing. That's it.
The issue is the clarity of what happens when it is violated, and what are the details. They're most likely not uniform through the 27 different nations. The process that Justina went through to get the first request approved pointed out, at least they attempted to say that they don't have at the European Union level the competences to deal with that. They could make a recommendation, and if we get people like George and others who are improving that to strengthen the protection for people's rights, that's what we're talking about.
Yes, so it's myself and Vladislav, who is our Czech representative. Hi, Lad, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Vladislav. What to introduce? Yeah, we are activists, and we started it, and I think now everybody is very welcome to join this process, because it's a process of citizens. It's not a process of 7 people, but it's a process of all citizens, and not only in the European Union, but all around the world, because this is what is affecting all of us. I think we are all of us in this, nicely, in this problem.
And the way the system works is anybody who will go on the website from the 27 countries will have an option to click the button to sign. And then what happens is we will ask them, would you like to use the EID signature, or do you want to sign it through a form? Now, as you know, the ID signature is only for the 16 countries. The form is available for everybody. So pretty much when you click on the just normal signature, not the EID, what happens is you just put your name, you put your address, your number, whatever number of the ID it is in your country that you have, and you sign. And that's how it works.
Hey, Justina, if I can, James.
Please do.
The thing is that if I understand it correct, I was thinking about it when we talked previously. Maybe it would be good if we sent someone on the street to collect signatures with tablet. It will be maybe more easy. With a tablet, you just write few things and it's done, yeah?
Absolutely. That's a great idea. And I think, you see, that's why we've got Lad, because he comes up with brilliant ideas. If they're able to do events when they have tablets, etc., absolutely. They can, grab a person and say, hey, we're here, we're doing it. Would you sign it? Well, there you go. This is the whole initiative. It's all there. And you can see, do you mind doing it here? It's not taking a long time. I've had a look through how long it takes. It's literally providing your details, your ID number, which we've got for every country. And then that's it. It's done. If you look at the point second that we're doing, right, it actually does say very specifically, we're looking at transparency in the way these people that are in power, or parliament members or commissioners or etc., actually work whether their job is tainted by the lack of the transparency, right? So I guess that affects not only, if we're looking at it from a broader scope, right, of any organization or entity or company that they are working with behind the scenes that should not be happening, right? Looking at transparency and like giving that process of decision making towards people. And again, you can read all these points there, by making also sure that there are penalties for people in power that will break these rules that will be put in place, right? This is actually kind of got bigger. It's to making sure that there are barriers put in place. Something that Helena called it, like an anti-corruption package is created, or a directive that will be a point that some sort of a point that will stop any possibilities of doing these corrupting actions with anybody, whoever we can mention here, right? And there are many organizations or people that wish to implement themselves into this process, which they shouldn't. It's supposed to be citizens who tell the government and European Union what we want.
Can I add something, please, to this?
Yeah.
Exactly how Justina says, if someone will be asking, what led us also into the decision to put these things into this initiative is that, for example, when the Pandemic Treaty Commission of WHO is preparing the treaty, these meetings are secret, but
yes.
They are secret. We cannot send someone to be there. We cannot see it. But there are people who have access into these secret meetings to WHO. And this is, for example, Melinda and Bill Gates Foundation. So these private people, these private organizations, because they have this significant influence to this WHO, they have access to these secret meetings, which public doesn't have. And this is what we want to change. So this is also what I would like to mention towards this, let's say, transparent demand.
I would like to give a concrete example. Okay, I put a link in the chat, and I'm going to share an image of this. I'm aware of this. I published this months ago. The European Union submitted a proposal, 50-some pages of information in regards to these negotiations. And
yes.
when you go to this page, you get this message. You're not allowed to see it.
Yeah.
Well, I don't remember how I found it, but I found it, and there it is. Okay? And so to this day, when you go to this page to try to find what the delegation of the European Union to the United Nations and other organizations submitted in these negotiations, there is no transparency.
Sure. I would like to also add something, because there was a question how to tell to people to sign this initiative, how to convince them. We had in Czech Republic, we had also problems, and I think that most of the people get up on the streets. They went to the streets when our government wanted to do like vaccination to everybody. And when they started to push on people vaccination, I think this was the main thing. And I think this is also what we want, because this informed consent and integrity of the body and all these things which are in the initiative are basically to protect us from the situation that someone will push us into something. Because if you read it, this initiative is really written, it's really described that there must be no pushing on people, everything must be voluntarily. Everything, all the patients must be informed well. They have to have access to the information. They have to clearly decide and stuff like that. So if someone is afraid that someone will push him in the work that he must be vaccinated, otherwise he will lose job or something like that. I mean, this is this argument, And if you want to use simple argument, this is the strongest argument.
What I would like to get everyone to do is sort of erase the blackboard of your mind and all of this confusion. Okay. The whole point of being able to simplify this in the sense of we're talking about two things. It's personal autonomy / informed consent. You know, the right to refuse is one. The second one is European Union transparency, you know, not just at Bilderberg and World Economic Forum, but at the World Trade Organization, the G20. You know, if the EU is going around to all of these multinational, you know, organizations and groups and events, it needs to not be in secret. And obviously they're doing exactly that at the WHO. It's just two things. It's informed consent and transparency. If you go up to someone and say, you know, here are two paragraphs, which is what's on the form, two paragraphs, informed consent and government or EU transparency. I'd like to invite you to sign this initiative. And here's my organization. Here's what we are doing. Have a conversation with them online or in person or whatever. And just say, look, you can sign that initiative. That's very easy. Here's how you do that. Let's talk about whatever else you want to talk about in the world and link your organization in support of an initiative that's going for a year and talk to them about whatever you're passionate about, whatever that may be, whatever's appropriate for them. Feel free to link the two together. Just don't get them jumbled up in people's heads. The initiative is very simple. You know, personal bodily autonomy and government transparency.